Hey,
Hi, Ankit.
hey, sir. Hi.
Uh, are you able to hear me clearly?
I can't. Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Okay, just give me a second. I'm just checking the setup.
I use
Hey Ankit. Ankit,
good.
आपको आवाज आ रही है ना मेरी? Are you able to hear me properly?
Ha. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, awesome, cool. Surbi, I think I am also able to hear Ankit, and I have my video on as well, and I can see Ankit as well.
Yes, Ayush. Just give me a second. I'm just checking the settings. एक बार final check कर लेते हैं.
हाँ, still कुछ रह गया है क्या fix करने के लिए? I think so far तो मतलब like it
Yeah, I
seems.
just have to spotlight both of you guys. Otherwise,
अच्छा,
वो that needs to be done. Just give me a second.
ठीक है, no worries, take your time. Yeah.
क्या चल रहा है आयुष?
कुछ नहीं अंकित, बस अभी तो आज थोड़ी सर्दी कम है यहाँ पे दिल्ली में, तो
अच्छा.
लाइक टुगेदर इट इज गुड यहाँ पे तो अभी, वरना अदरवाइज बाय दिस टाइम इट इज यूजुअली वेरी फॉगी एंड फिर ठंड फिर कुछ ज्यादा ही बढ़ जाती है, तो
बढ़िया.
एटलीस्ट टुडे इट्स नॉट लाइक दैट, तो वही आज लाइक देख रहे थे हम लोग.
ये आपका ऑफिस है?
नहीं अंकित, दिस इज माय होम. लाइक आप नोएडा होगे तो
ऑफिस.
मतलब लाइक प्लीज लाइक
होम
हेल्प.
ऑफिस. नाइस.
So this is basically my home setup only.
Beautiful. Yeah. Doesn't look different from US.
हाँ, आई थिंक थोड़ा सा मतलब वो सेंट्रल थीमेटिक रख के थोड़ा बनाया था, मतलब सौम्या माय वाइफ, मतलब लाइक कि शी इज अ बिग फैन ऑफ मिनिमलिज्म इन जनरल, तो वो डिजाइन करके उसने पूरा घर बनाया था.
Uh,
राइट. सो अंकित, आई थिंक एज डिस्कस वो काफी ऑर्गेनिक ही रखेंगे. आई थिंक बाकी लाइक डिस्कस तुमने काफी कुछ कर ही लिया, तो आई विल किक स्टार्ट द कॉन्वर्सेशन. ठीक है,
yep,
फिर उसके
absolutely.
बाद तो वी जस्ट हैव टू सॉर्ट ऑफ लाइक डिस्कस थिंग्स, बट आइस ब्रेकर मैं कर दूंगा.
Totally.
Cool. Okay, I think Surbi, people have started to join.
Yes, Ayush, I am just putting up a message in the chat for everyone, and we'll be starting in the next 5 to 6 minutes.
Sure, absolutely. Cool.
Oh.
Otherwise, Ankit, how's it going for you?
All good, yeah. I wish, by the way, like, ये lighting, is it okay or मैं वो बंद कर दूँ पहले वाला?
Seems okay to me, Ankit. Surbi, do you want anything to be changed with respect to Ankit's lighting at his end?
No, I think it's good. It's
Okay,
fine.
cool.
इंडिया में मेरा सेटअप नहीं है यार, प्रॉब्लम नहीं है.
Okay. I think India, like, तो usually मतलब like कि work from home India में like more or less तो अब it's sort of like coming to an end in general.
Very true.
So that's like kind of there. I mean, like most of my friends, matlab like in not just in here, I would say Noida, but also Bangalore, and so matlab like all of them are now being called to office. So
Yeah.
different hai setup, like to what it used to be like 2.5 years, matlab पूरा COVID के time में. अब तो
True.
like not at all.
True. Yeah, like, everything has its own story, right? Like, what starts, it has to end at one point of time.
But what is personally preferred to you, Ankit? Like if I have to ask you, work from home or work from office, what would
In
you
my
prefer?
entire, 16 years of experience, I never worked from home,
Oh,
you
is
know.
it? Okay.
But this time, post COVID, it was a different story because, like, I got, like my younger one, he was just
Yeah.
born, and it was more convenient for me to, like, work remotely, and it clicked. surprisingly.
Right.
Usually, like, I used to be a 5 days person in
Okay.
office. So,
Mm.
but now, like, it's indifferent because, I think both side have their own story, like
Mm.
working remote versus. I think when you're new to the industry, it's more important that you go to office to understand and
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
decide and, you know.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So I think same for us. I think we started out as a company during the COVID period as well, and like it was a work from home origins for us in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But I think like after like we were beyond 10 people in the company, we started, and especially like as a like early stage startup, right? It becomes even then more important for us to kind of like be in person, like with like alongside each other, because things were like changing so rapidly. Like every day we were discussing something with the customers, like building out features, discarding features and stuff like that, talking to customers. I think doing all of this remotely like was a little bit challenging for us, especially in the like very early days or so. I think that is when we took a call, like we were, I think when 15 people or so, that let's just start working from office only. So
yeah.
lately, I think in the last 6 7 months only, like we have now all the people like from different parts of the like country kind of like then moved in here at Noida to like sort of like now starting to work from office. And we feel personally, I think that's more productive in a way because the decisions are being made a lot more faster as compared to what they were made earlier when we were like remote. And also I think the level of clarity within the team flows a lot in faster as compared to what basically we were experiencing before, right? So I think like these are a few, I would say, like productive parts, right? And then on the things that we could say that we miss of the work from home period, of course, there's now a lot of travel involved for like some people that, okay, hey,
Yeah,
we have to kind of like travel
very
to
true.
office. That also kind of like takes significant amount of time as well. And then like just like people were like I would say into that zone, right? That okay, like work from home zone, that they'll sit comfortably on a laptop and then build that particular focus to get things done overall, right? Getting that zone back or creating that zone back like now in office is a little bit challenging for a lot of folks, I'd say.
Very, very true. No, I can't agree more.
Correct, right. Surbi, we'll wait for your heads up to kickstart the webinar. But yeah, otherwise
I
it's been
think Ayush, we can start in the next 2 minutes at 10:35. Yeah.
okay. Okay, cool, Surbi. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you said it rightly, like, when especially for the company like OpsLib, it makes more sense that you people like, sit down in a closed room and brainstorm the ideas and, take it from there. That the work from home could be a, better option when it's for the enterprise and like, you have your roles and responsibility well defined and you don't need to like, delve into the critical development
Right.
and cross team collaboration. I mean, cross team collaboration can also happen virtually, but
Mm.
at the end of the day, it all depends upon how fast and how soon you want to deliver certain things.
Correct. And I think from an energy standpoint as well, Ankit, I think like we like are a early stage startup, right? So at it becomes and so the cultures are also basically are in its inceptions, right? That
Yep.
what kind of a culture like we would want to create in the company, and how that sort of like internalizes like within the people. Doing all of this virtually when you're just starting up is like super hard, like in my
Yep.
opinion, right? And then like once everyone sits together, so the pulse of the company is like really determined once everyone sits together. They realize the working styles of other folks as well, the energy on the
Yeah.
table is like really transcended and stuff like that, right? So I think setting the culture is also like very important, like in a work from office setup overall, right? Which otherwise is very difficult in a work from home setup in general.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Okay, we have just maybe 1 minute left. Should we we'll start at 10:35, right?
Yeah, I think we can start now, Ayush. Let's.
Okay, cool, cool. Cool. We'll officially start then. Okay. Hi, folks. Thank you for joining in this webinar. So this is about myself and Ankit, whom I'll introduce in a short while, speaking about how we have worked together over the past couple of years to solve different FinOps challenges, and what all, I would say, dimensions and areas that we have seen in, I would say, company which is in its hyper growth mode. The ups and downs, the pitfalls, the management practices, and also how to kind of like really set up a like robust FinOps culture when it comes to a company which is more than, I would say, 1,000 people in number. So tons of different things about real world experiences, what we've gone through in setting up, I would say, a large scale FinOps practice for a cloud spend which is more than double digits, right? Spanning across multiple cloud providers and other SaaS providers as well. So we are going to talk about those things in a very, I would say, transparent and candid manner, right? And we want to structure it in a way that, okay, we kind of like walk through our journey, and it would be a general discussion between me and Ankit, right? And then of course we'll open up the session to audience as well for the last 10-13 minutes, where we'd be happy to like answer any questions that you guys can have regarding anything that you would want to sort of like feel worthy of us from understanding perspective. So let's setting the tonality of that, right? On that note, I want to introduce myself first. So, hey guys, I am Ayush. I run a company by the name of OpsLift, and OpsLift happens to be a FinOps management platform wherein we work with companies who are spending large amounts of money upon the cloud across multiple providers, that is AWS, GCP, Azure, and also on other SaaS providers which have a consumption-based pricing model, such as New Relic, Datadog, Databricks, Snowflake, etc., and help FinOps practitioners, directors, like VPs, and other, I would say, engineering leadership professionals, including the finance people, to set up a robust, I would say, accountability and governance process that helps them to achieve a state of zero overspending upon the cloud, and then also ensure that it stays the same as per the budgets of the cloud decided by the company. So that's in a nutshell that what we do. As a company, like we are a group of 20-25 people at this point in time, been in the market since like last 3 years or so, and we work with fantastic enterprise customers such as Ankit, right? Like with whom like we have like more or less practically built our product, and are now like sort of like serving markets across India and the US as well at this point in time. So yeah, that's us. Ankit, I'd like let you introduce yourself. I know we have spoken a lot, so right, like more than me, I think it's just helpful for the audience to listen from you about what you do, how you do. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ayush. First and foremost, thanks for providing me the opportunity to speak with you guys and this audience, beautiful audience. A little bit about me, myself, Ankit Senapati, having 16 years of experience in IT industry. My career has been widespread in several domains. Under the cloud is the later part. I have worked in data center, the core infrastructure, the storage technologies, and core development, SAP, multiple domains and dimensions. Lastly, in the cloud domain, I have been working since past 7 years. I did run a team of capacity planning and management, and then FinOps practice from my previous company, which was also into the credit space. I have been working with Innovaccer since last 1.5 years, to be precise, from May 2022, and leading the FinOps practice here for the cloud service. As Ayush mentioned, we have multiple cloud service providers, name it all, and we have it. The number goes to double digit, in the cost per month, and my roles and responsibilities are kind of widespread, looking after the architecture, making sure that the cost is remaining within a certain threshold, which we have to maintain all the time. So that's it. We will talk more about as we enter into this 1.5 year hour journey we will explore more and talk about it.
Thank you, Ankit, for that introduction, right? And let's just start off with the context, I would say, like for this webinar, right? Like regarding the Innovaccer's journey that we have been through in the last, I would say, couple of years or so, right? With respect to how cloud spend management practice has like evolved like over the course of the last couple of years or so, right? So Ankit, like would want to understand from you from the point in time when you joined the company, when you joined Innovaccer, right, and to what we are like really today, right? Like what was it like with respect to the cloud spend management when you joined Innovaccer? I think let's just maybe like spend some time like around that, and then we'll delve into that. Okay, what did we do and stuff like that. But yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. So before I jump into Innovaccer specific things, so talking about this overall FinOps practice and FinOps culture, like, why this FinOps practice evolved in recent years, right? So previously, like, when we used to run the on-prem data centers and everything, like, at that time, there was no FinOps. Like, you will have a bunch of people in the data center who still exist, and like, they will be running the show. Then the cloud came in, and like, suddenly we felt that, like, we could migrate our data center workload to cloud, and we did it successfully. Not specific to Innovaccer, but like, across the industry. We're just reading an article, like, in back in 2022, the entire industry that they spent almost like, $490 billion in cloud, and in 2023 the number coming around $600 billion. Out of that, back in 2022, the wastage was 36%, versus in 2023 they are estimating to be 28%. So roughly 30% wastage of like, $600 billion. That's translated to $200 billion. That's like, you can imagine, like, it's way beyond anyone's imagination, like, how much money cloud is getting invested. And then the good thing is also, like, in the cloud providers, they are also encouraging people to, like, take FinOps more seriously, because I mean, it's kind of a build, operate, and transform state, right? So you keep on building, like any SaaS company, any startup, like Upsleep, like Innovaccer, like, and any startup you take, the initially we keep on building things. We I mean, we have to like, make our product look great, like, don't think much about the cost at that point of time, like, the product should work. So over the course of time, you kind of like, pile up the resource, and end up one day you realize that, like, the cloud cost is going too high. So that's where the FinOps practice comes to play. Like, when I started my journey with Innovaccer, at that time, it was kind of a wild run. I must acknowledge, like,
completely
for a
imagine.
company of our size at that time, I mean, unfortunately, I cannot reveal the numbers, but the spend was more than 35%, like, for the revenue what we were doing at that point in time, and that was crazy. So 35%. Now through all the practices, which I'm going to, like, reveal in some time, through all the practices of cloud cost management, we have brought it down to, like an almost single digit. I mean, in 14-15% range. So 20% cloud cost difference for a company of our size, that's a significant number. Roughly translates to, like, $30+ million in 1.5 years. That's a huge number. And I would not say, like, FinOps is not like a gold mine, right? Like, you can't just go and decrease or drop the cloud cost. You have to prepare a strategy. You have to make sure, like, you collaborate well. So when it comes to Innovaccer, when I started this journey, at that time, as I said, the cloud cost was very high, and then we had this Goliath kind of goal to bring it down as much as possible, as soon as possible. So, and we knew that, like, where are the wastage, where should we look. We had the necessary tool set, like, Upslift was there. But that time, like, we needed to streamline the process, because what you can optimize, but you have to strategize it. You have to, govern it. You have to make sure people understand what you're trying to do. So that time, like, what we did is we kind of like, all these FinOps tool set and practices and like, principles, they are great. But being actually working in the FinOps domain, like some of you might be already doing it, you know that like, it's not always easy to get the necessary, like, the anticipated saving, because you have to work across multiple teams. You have to like, plan it accordingly, and then you have to take the necessary downtimes, customer approval, and many more. So we had to strategize it. We had to like, make sure we collaborate with the folks, become a good project manager. One leader, great leader within the Innovaccer, like, once said me, if you want to become a successful FinOps practitioner, you have to become a project manager first.
Correct.
Because you might so what we did, like, just summarizing it. So we took all the possible measures what we could have done. We took the necessary surgical strikes at the beginning to bring the cost as much down as possible by just wiping up the wastage. So for example, like, let's say you have hundreds of EC2s running and without any accountability, like, they were created long back, and it's still running. So we had to identify that, and that identification process is very important, because like, you need a tool. Fortunately, like, ops lab at that time, we were just like, having the relationship, and they came up with this great idea of creating the asset management feature, which like, helped us a lot.
I think that was the time when we designed that, like, incepted conceptually, like the feature as well.
So that raw data, like, kind of the CMDB of your environment of AWS, Azure, and everything, that helped us like, identify what is needed, why it was created, who created, how, for what purpose it was created, and all these toxics. So we kind of took that surgical strike mode, then started doing it strategically for each and every customer, for the tenants, and then now today we can say we have a much streamlined, governed practice of FinOps within Innovaccer. The people are much empowered to understand what FinOps is, and they're kind of educated enough. I must say we are still have a long way to go, but we are in a comfortable state where the cloud should be.
Correct, absolutely. No, I think I completely agree on that. I think could resonate to like all the points that you mentioned right from the very beginning, right? Wherein I think once we started our journey with Innovaccer, I think by the time you joined in, we were, I think, just 6 months early before you, roughly like that, right? And we also kind of like really saw that, okay, the more than like just the number being very high, that is, as you mentioned, that was basically 35% more than the defined average of like against the total revenue like of the company on a monthly or an annual like period overall, right? It was more about the complexity of our, I would say, systems, due to which the cloud costs were like really high overall.
Totally.
And this complexity was not just a technical complexity, I think, to what I remember, that okay, it was also because of how I would say like in a lot of ways, or I would say simply putting, in non-caring ways, we have dealt with the cloud, I would say, in the past like 2-3 years overall, right? That has resulted into a lot of compounding effects of very small things into the bigger spends, which we were not even like aware of. And it was sort of like very frustrating to see at times that, okay, hey, it is let's say this one EC2 instance which someone kind of like really prepared in a, I would say, staging environment, which was not being used for a very long time, and then it kind of like resulted into a $20,000 bill like for us overall, right? Like starting was like for us also to kind of like really identify these things like with you, right? I think like that was like I would say the early days that I like sort of like remember for, right? But I think curious to sort of like understand, because I think that is something like we are working with you today, and would be helpful for the audience also to understand, right? And in general also it is said like as a major challenge in the FinOps world as well, that getting, I would say, people to take action upon the cloud cost, right, and then making them cost aware in general. I think you have been able to successfully do that at Innovaccer, right? We've seen you kind of like doing that like over the course of like last 2 years, right? How were you able to get that done? I think because that's like predominantly the hardest challenge in FinOps space as of now, that it's like one part of the problem to kind of like go ahead, we'll talk more about it, how do we kind of like create that structured visibility, and then we like sort of like move into the optimization side of things, and then we automate like a lot of things around it, and get that entire, I would say, FinOps flywheel like kind of like working for us, right? But in, I would say, a culture, cross-border culture, that is an Indo-US SaaS company, right, where people across India and the US from an engineering standpoint are working, right? How did you manage to kind of like get people take action upon the cloud cost? Yeah, would love to sort of like understand that process like from you.
Yeah, absolutely, sure. So like you said it right, like so when talking about the for example, we have a saying that like building is difficult but destruction is easy, right? But in cloud world it's opposite, right? Building is much easier, but destroying it, deleting it, it's like it takes a village to do it. And in order to because you go the developers have the power to build things, or the like the infra people, or anybody like who has access to cloud, they could build, and they could keep on building things without realizing like end of the day the accounts payable or the finance team receiving a bill, and the cost is not like most of the company the $200 billion what we are talking about. I mean, they understand cloud, they know cloud, they have all the tool sets like to understand why, how, and where it's getting wasted. But it doesn't mean that like they can't do anything. The real challenge here is the like cross team collaboration, because the it's everybody is right in their stance, and like because for example the architecture team, their responsibility is to like design the system, and then like keep hand it over to the other folks to build it. Now the people who are the SREs, for example, they keep on building things, and it's not their responsibility to like to look into the cloud cost.
Right.
How, in theory, it's everyone's responsibility, like to make sure that we adhere to the cost pillar. But in practical situation, it doesn't happen. That's why we see this massive amount of wastage. Now, when it comes to, I mean, I can't talk about the industry, but when it comes to Innovaccer, what we did is like initially it was a real challenge for us to bring that cost aware mindset. Leadership, they were much aligned that we are going into a heavy cloud cost, and we have to bring down the curve. That was a one-liner from the leadership. But in order to implement it, that was the real challenge, because you not only need to technically understand each and every layer, each and every component services across multiple cloud, but also you need to ensure that people do understand what you're talking about, and they have to also embrace your recommendation, like otherwise it will not go anywhere. As I said, it's not like it's kind of finding a needle in the haystack, because you have multi-million-dollar save like cost every month, and then out of that you have to keep on saving things to bring down the cost without impacting the cloud cost performance, the cloud performance, right? Because end of the day, customers satisfaction is the most priority thing on top of like your cloud cost.
Correct.
So as I said earlier, like without, I mean, you in order to become a successful FinOps practitioner, you must have the technical understanding. You must need to understand the architecture of the environment, and then some strong foundational knowledge of the compute and like storage and the infrastructure stack, I must say, right? How the each and every layer correlate and talk to each other.
Makes sense.
And in order to become a successful FinOps practitioner, you need to become a good project manager, because you have to strategize on things. If you remember, like, when you and we were having the initial assignments, like, we were kind of like, struggling to understand what needs to be done. I mean, we were doing things, but it was not getting into the right direction. So we had to revamp that process, that culture, and then make sure that people understand, that they are well informed. So, now comes the FinOps principle, how we became successful. FinOps principle says like, inform, operate, and optimize, right? So inform, optimize, and operate. So our first goal was to make sure that like, among that time, like, 1,800 people, they understand that each and everything what they are doing, it's like, as if they are spending from the cloud, with their own credit card, right? Taking the accountability, taking the responsibility. That's where the tagging came to play. That's where OpsLip came to play. We needed the necessary tool sets to ensure and then identify who has created what over the course of time, right? What's the accountability? What's the use case? What's the return on investment? All those things, like, we did it project by project, department by department, and then made sure that, like, everybody understand what they had done for their, like, own department or own customer, right? Now comes the optimized part. So people were informed. I mean, we did form the, steering committee, did take help from multiple other stakeholders, the leaders, like, from our infrastructure domain, the database domain, the platform engineering. So we collaborated with each other and created a FinOps steering committee, or the cost control steering committee. Then we are meeting frequently, where we're identifying the gaps and, like, understand what needs to be done. That's like, kind of strategizing what needs to be done. Now the next part is to optimize the environment. Once we have the recommendation, right, like, from the architecture standpoint, like, just the application architecture was absolutely fine. But when it comes to the real deployment, I'll just take one example. So for example, Citrix, right? Citrix is a memory intensive workload. You may not need ample amount of CPU. You definitely need certain CPU, but, like, it's kind of a Citrix or Elasticsearch, take example, right? So they are memory intensive. If you provision a CPU intensive machine for the Elastic or the, like, Citrix, you will end up getting the performance, but at a higher cost, because, like, the C series machine, they don't have the, like, necessary memory power what's needed for your, workload. So and then you keep on like, paying more and more. So we had to identify at multiple layers, like, first the highest hierarchy, like, what customer is having the highest cost, what teams are having the highest cost, and then, like, dig it down one layer by layer, like, it's kind of like, the inverted pyramid. So after doing so, we established the war room with all the customer success managers, and, like, made sure that they understand, they're informed that what needs to be done in a right way without, impacting their customer performance, the product performance, right? So just simple changes, like, within the Kubernetes cluster, or they're, like, EC2, or their Azure or GCP, whatever it is, so those things worked out well. And I must say, to become the cost savings will keep on adding when you have to, but you have to make sure that you maintain those 3D, right? Like, the dedication, determination, devotion. I mean, you can't just sit on it. You have to keep on working day and night, and, like, as they say, every drop make a ocean. So that's how the FinOps culture evolves within any company, right? And you call yourself a successful FinOps practitioner, because each drop or each cent you save, that kind of piles up, right? So that I mean, that has been a long journey, and we have a long journey to also cover. But so far, that process, that culture has definitely worked in our case. And doing that, we may, I mean, I think we have enabled a lot of people, a lot of, like, the product managers, or the, the customer success managers, and our SREs, and everybody, to understand that cost is equally important. What performance and cost both has to be go parallelly, and slowly we are seeing that revolution within our company, because we are out of the startup mindset and then startup world. I mean, we are going to the enterprise, and we have to, work like enterprise, otherwise it will shoot up again.
Definitely. I think these are like very important points, Ankit. I think I was parallelly reflecting upon when you were mentioning about how the entire process like really worked out for us, wherein we started out by informing people that okay, hey, this is potentially what it is going wrong by manually, and then like automating it through the product that okay, what all potential things that are misconfigured across multiple cloud providers, and then kind of sitting with the teams and
Yeah.
doing back and forth with them, and then also the concept of like steering committee across like different I would say departmental functions within engineering, that is infra team, DB team, the application team, and yourself, and then driving actions like through that, right? And then finally getting to a state wherein everybody was like sort of treating cost as one of their important KPIs, whether they were like really pushing out the applications into staging or like into production as well, like at some point in time, right? In all these phases, right? I think that, like one of the things that we have closely, like I would say, worked very hard, like along with you and multiple other folks at Innovaccer, right, is to kind of have the right kind of visibility, right? That is like, of course, like asset management is one like type of visibility that you particularly utilize a lot to take care of your initiatives, like in general, right? But could you talk more about the like visibility aspect a lot? Because as you said that, okay, it's not just, I would say, the standard visibility that we get out of the cloud native consoles. That is, okay, tell me the cost in terms of my EC2 spend or the RDS spend or the Azure VMs, the compute VMs on GCP, etc., right? To what my understanding says, as and when I think we grew in terms of, I would say, the like size and scale of our infrastructure, and also the size and, I would say, the complexity of our team structure as well, like at Innovaccer, right? The visibility like really demanded us to like to create, I would say, like the structures which were more, I would say, business friendly in nature. That, as you mentioned, I think, okay, tell me what's the cost of my this particular customer looking like on AWS, right? With this underlying assumption that, okay, hey, it's not that straightforward to like really calculate that cost of the customer, because it could be spread across, I would say, multiple providers in the very first place, to like just to put this right into perspective. And then like we being basically like a single tenant architecture in a lot of places, basically, right? And then how do we sort of like really distribute that like sort of like cost of those, I would say, single tenant systems into multiple customers, etc., right? So creating that visibility like from a business context is like in our experience like super hard, right? But yeah, like would love to hear from you that, okay, how like the showback driven visibility, wherein every like people in the team, like ranging from engineering to finance to leadership and to everyone else who is directly or indirectly working with the cloud, right? Like how should we think about like creating visibility of cloud costs into the company, and like for different stakeholders? I think that would be an interesting like insight to hear from you.
Absolutely. Like, so that brings to the initial discussion of like, talking with Opslift about creating the persona-based views, right?
Yeah,
So
correct.
each and every department, like, so cloud cost management, I mean, you call it cloud cost management, you call it FinOps, you call it cloud business office, so many teams have given many names to the cloud cost management, but the morality of the fact is, like, you have to make sure that your cost remains within control and without compromising capacity. So I must say, like, FinOps in cloud, it's a blend of capacity planning and maintaining the cost, and collaboratively waiting. I mean, I would say it's 20% finance, 80% technical, right? So sometimes people think it otherwise, like, FinOps is like in the finance team. It's not like that. So you have to understand each and every granular details within cloud. Otherwise, like, you can't just optimize it. So now talking about the visibility, it brings back to the initial discussion of persona-based views, where you need to understand whether, like, at a department head layer, like, for example, a CIO, CTO level, and then brings back to the VP level, the directors level, and then finally, like, at the engineering talent level, like, what kind of dashboards they should see, what kind of like data they should see, and then what kind of like data driven decision they need to make. So there are multiple aspects, And then how did we do it within Innovaccer? Unfortunately, with help of OpsLift is, we started working on the tagging part, right? So if you remember, we didn't have the tagging as we expected initially. We still don't have it, but we are kind of doing a good progress. So then breaking it down to understand at a department at the for example, app engineering level, what are the resources they have built? Security, what are the resources they have built? The tagging comes to play here. Once we have the tagging, then comes forget about the shared tenancy or the single tenancy. That's a totally different thing. So be it a multi-tenant architecture or a single tenant architecture, you will have your dedicated cost, static cost, I must say, and then you have some shared cost, right? So identifying those shared cost is equally important, and you never know, because you can tag it, and then it might be taking a lot of cost from your environment, right? I'll just give you one example where your tool definitely helped us out. For example, the SFTP, so you during the pipeline creation, you create SFTP servers, you create NAT gateways, etc. But you don't realize those are small chunks, and you cannot tag them out, and then you don't realize that they pile up in your cost metrics, right? So through the asset management feature, we were able to identify what are the SFTP servers with 0 users, and why are they created. It didn't take us much longer to identify those owners, and just delete them out. Now talking, so that's where the empowerment from the tool perspective comes to play, because when we are talking about a single cloud provider, you can go with the native tool sets, you have Cost Explorer, you have cloud cost management billing, you have Google billing console. But for an enterprise, you cannot become successful because you cannot keep on changing between different console to see what's connected where. You don't have that necessary topology, which is much needed, because you need to connect the dots, what's been connected where. For example, connecting from AWS to Snowflake and Kafka, and all those things come to play, and then you definitely need a tool. And then be it OpsLift, be it any XYZ tool, you have ample amount of tools in the market, So if you want to become successful in the FinOps domain, you definitely need a tool, because you can't develop a homegrown tool. A lot of people opt for it to develop a homegrown tool, but sometimes it's not. For us, it didn't work out. I mean, we had to go with a standard tool, and an OpsLift has been doing wonders for us. At that time, so we had to create that persona-based views to understand who is owning what, and then identifying the key stakeholders and the key developmental areas, and each and every service-wise breakdown of what's been spent where, and is it optimal, so that calling out that, taking that decision, and then becoming making sure that everybody understand what they have built is quite crucial, right? Because you can enable the users by certain views, by certain dashboards, and then by creating the personas, and then slowly they will become aware about it. But when it comes to the FinOps responsibility, you have to keep on educating the folks. For example, when you have a master pair consolidation with your linked account, simple unblended and amortized cost, they make a huge difference. If your unblended cost so $10, your amortized cost may be $50, because you have savings plan coming from the master pair, but the owner or the persona owner, they don't realize what's the difference between unblended and amortized. I mean, you the finance practice, you have to educate them, you have to coach them, right? And we had been doing that. Not only the tool set has helped the end users to understand and observe the cost in a better way, but from the FinOps side, we have made sure that they are empowered and enabled to ask questions, understand their spend, and take informed decision when needed. Because end of the day, we are driven by, a certain percentage of our revenue can only go to cloud cost. So everybody has to align that, okay, that's the end goal, and how can we reduce the cost without compromising on the performance, right? And that's the synergic or the harmonic balance you have to maintain all the time between different teams and the FinOps practice, and then we have been working on it since last couple of years, I would say.
No, definitely, Ankit. I think this is like the things that we work with you like in the past couple of years with respect to like the persona-based views creation, right? Like it was even, I would say, like challenging to us. Like I'm talking to you here as someone who is a creator of a tool like for the FinOps market, and you are a seasoned FinOps practitioner overall, right? So being on that side as well, right? The standardization of doing the standardization of all the data, like from multiple, I would say, provider systems overall, right? And then normalizing it and then presenting it out on dashboards and building out analytics on top of it, right? This itself was a hard engineering problem for us to kind of like really solve for, right?
Absolutely.
And still do solve for it today, like in many ways, right? So I think that is like one thing. I'd say that okay, why you kind of like really clarified that okay, why is it sort of like really needed so that everybody understands the cloud cost in their own way, as you said that like things such as like blended versus unblended cost, like small things such as this could be even not known to people like in who are working in like I would say the industry for a very very long time. I think still it could happen to people, right? So getting I would say this context out to people with respect to cloud cost, the best way to do it is to kind of like explain the cloud cost in the language that they like really understand, and that language is different for different people. For finance it would be like very different, like for the engineering leadership it would be very different, like for the FinOps practitioners it would be very different, and I would say the software engineers ranging from DevOps, SREs, and everyone else who are creating and deleting or modifying resources upon the cloud. For them, I would say that it's a very different kind of visibility that's being required.
Yes, see, I use on that note, like, for the developers, like, or the development team, they need the necessary compute, right? Like, they don't care whether we are giving them a R series machine or a P series machine from Azure or like T series. I mean, they don't care about it. I mean, and it's logical, it's natural, and it's expected. I mean, and from the architecture's standpoint, they will provide that compute what could act in a better way in parallel with the application design, right?
Right.
It's the FinOps team who is responsible to provide the best cost-effective, instance,
Right.
which will act like, which will work for both the people. Like, the development team will not compromise in the compute. And from the architecture, it's kind of like, it's doing the wise judgment, like, providing necessary compute with a lesser cost. Just for a simple example, right? Like, you for example, companies who has a spot fleet, right? Fortunately, AWS and Azure, they have spot instances to use, and they claim that it's very, very cheaper. But when you do the when you do a good FinOps practice and implement a good FinOps practice within your organization, you have to do that, balancing act. You have to strategize, how much you want to spend in what type of like, environment. For example, when I joined Innovaccer at that time, like, 95% of our workload was on demand, right? So we are just paying everything to, AWS or Azure. So the first thing what we did was to like, implement ample amount of savings plan, and then initially we didn't do it for 3 years because we didn't know what landscape we're going into, because we knew that we are kind of like wasting a lot of cost in cloud. So we can't just blindly go and buy 3 years reservation or savings, right? People also tend to buy reservation instance versus like savings plan, because they think, again, I'm just talking about generals, I mean, I'm not pointing at anybody here. So it's like, it's a kind of common practice that okay, reservation gives me 5 or 6% more cost benefit versus the savings plan. So let me go and buy a reservation, right? And let's say you went and buy a B2 series reservation or a R5 series reservation, but reservation has its own challenges, right? You can't switch the family, you can't change, like, you were stuck there, right? As I said initially, right? Like, let's say, for example, for Citrix workload, you have used a T series machine, right? And you bought $100,000 of reservation.
Right.
Now, tomorrow you can't change that family, and you are in the mercy of, like, the cloud service provider, whether they will accept your request or not. So you have no room to go anywhere, right? Like, so that's the reason, like, we chose to be in the savings plan, which could give potentially, like, 3 or 4% less cost benefit, but the risk factor was very, very less. Now, you might ask, like, how did we do that calculation? So that's where the FinOps tool comes to play, where it kind of, like, other than the cost explorer, the FinOps tool will give me an idea and insight that, okay, what's my on demand, what's my, like, say, reservation and everything is happening, what could potentially look like for my future with all the incoming projects and all. And then I will take a calculated decision on how much savings plan I want to buy. In the industry, best practice says that you have to maintain 90% of your workload under savings plan, but you have little bit more of a lever to go beyond 90%. I must say we are running almost like 95%, and then the reason behind it is, like, we have a buffer and a buffer from spot plate, right? So for example, tomorrow, if my savings plan goes out of, like, the I mean, it gets 100% coverage and I am going into, like, breach my commitment, I can just convert couple of, like, spot instance to on demand, and it will cover my savings plan, so that's where the beauty of the balance comes to play, right? And then sometimes it's usually we have an impression that spot instance are, like, much cheaper, but in our analysis, again, it's just specific to our use case, it could be different for others. We have seen the spot instance are little bit more expensive than what we are getting in our 3-year commitment of savings plan. Because spot cost varies between, like, what region you choose, what availability zone you choose, what type of machine you choose, right? And so there are a lot of things you have to do in the back end. I mean, it's not a a single
one size fits for all. It doesn't, like, sort of, like, work that way. I think that's very true. And I think with respect to reserved instance and savings plans as well, right? I think that is what we learned from you as well in the process, that, okay, how do we that it's a commitment, it's an investment that we have to make, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So like, if we are not sort of, like, really very sure that, okay, are we going to be super much confident about the predictability of our infrastructure scaling as compared to the business that we're expecting against for, right? It's very hard to make, like, 3-year commitments, like, overall, right? And also, like we've particularly seen that, okay, if you let's say make certain, like, commitment, if you've already made certain commitments, right, you've got to kind of, like, really ensure that, okay, these commitments are being fully utilized, but otherwise, like, it results into some costs, like, for you, right? Like, you purchase,
like, if you breach the commitment, like, you're going to pay the cloud provider no matter what, whether you
and that's a serious problem, Ankit. I think it's not like in Innovaccer, kind of, like, we saw at, like, bits and pieces, like at some places, right? But also basically with our other customer interactions, right? We kind of, like, really realized that this was one of the top 3 pain points of people, that, okay, hey guys, like, we've like designed our RI strategy, we have kind of, like, bought certain savings plans as well, and RIs across and different, I would say, other commitment plans based upon other cloud providers as well, right? But we don't know where we stand with respect to that.
That's where, like, I use, like, that's where in order to ease that pain point, people in FinOps practice, like, they should actually understand what are the workload can go to spot fleet. So you always have that Brahmastra in the back end that you can go and use it if you are losing your commitment, because and that's where another key factor FinOps play is, like, the cross team collaboration. You act as the bridge between architecture, the engineering folks, and the finance team, because and then finance and sales. So you have the visibility into what is the forecast for the next 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, and you also have visibility, like, what app team is developing in terms of product and
Right,
all this.
right.
So you have that like, forecast of what and how the product or how your company will go in the future, right? So
Correct,
you,
correct.
you plan, but sometimes the planning doesn't work, right? Like, and so you need to have a option B all the time. And in our case, the spot fleet is something like, which is our option B.
Correct.
And we,
Right, right. No, no,
you always don't want to, like, go a 3 year plan because it saves money. Like, you have to have the mix of 1 and 3 years. So you have multiple options to cover yourself and ease that savings plan pain point.
Makes sense. Cool, Ankit. I think, Ankit, let's take a few questions in the process as well. It's an interesting conversation, but I see the audience has started to put up some questions as well, right? So we have Mukul. He has asked like a couple of questions, and then we have Jamie as well. He has asked like questions. So let's just maybe take one question out of the two questions of Mukul, and then let's take up Jamie's questions as well, right? So let's just take the first question from Mukul. So Mukul happens to be HOD safety at Hela India, and he asks that, okay, I think this question is more for us, Ankit. So sorry on this, but yeah, help us answer this as well. So he asks, is your product only for a particular industry, that is finance, domain, etc., or configurable, scalable to other industries, example being automotive, etc. So like Mukul has shared some background context as well. He says that automotive manufacturers store the data on cloud from different ECU, that's like small computers, in automobile to better understand the behavior of the vehicle in different conditions. So yeah, I think I'll just like go first on this, Ankit, right? So of course I think like the product is completely industry agnostic, and that's by design of the kind of the product that we are building, that it is cloud finance management or like FinOps or like howsoever the terminology that suits us better kind of like we want to put out is, right? Like cloud by default, as long as we are, I would say, dealing with the same provider systems, that is AWS, GCP, Azure, and I would say like Oracle Cloud and like other, I would say, standard, I would say, provider systems overall, right? The product in general, like I would say, like would be fitted for like anyone who would want to sort of like really develop a robust FinOps practice in their like companies overall, right? It is not like industry, I would say, specific. I mean, I wouldn't like go ahead and say that, okay, ops lift for finance companies is going to, I would say, produce like a largely varied results when it is deployed, let's say in a bank, like in a, let's say in a banking company overall, right? Versus basically ops lift like being deployed at an automotive company, like, you know, who is basically using Azure, AWS, and GCP, and like other provider systems in general, right? And is spending a huge amount of money and want to develop a FinOps practice on top of it. So it would give any different results than the banking, I would say, customer of ours, right? Because the FinOps function predominantly kind of like remains the same. It's because same operating systems, operating providers that we like deal with, and the overall business dynamics associated with cloud kind of like remains the same largely overall. That any, I would say, financial company would also want to kind of like understand that, okay, hey, what's basically my cloud spend versus, I would say, let's say the total annual revenue that the bank makes in an annual in an annual period overall, right? And I think the similar benchmarking would be done by an automotive company as well. That, okay, hey, an automotive company who is using cloud to perform, I would say, different analytics would be spending, like, I would say, like certain millions upon the cloud to power up those, right? They would also want to kind of like quantify the return on investment on the cloud with respect to the kind of, I would say, the business that like automotive company has been able to generate through their sales in the entire year overall. So I think that's how the product remains consistent in its kind of like perception and usage across different industries. But yeah, happy to like hear you, Ankit. What's your sort of like
Yeah, absolutely. Like, so if you have anything and everything, so if you have any single footprint in the cloud, and if you have multiple cloud footprint, then you definitely need a FinOps tool, because the native tool sets, or the like the cost explorer, the cloud cost management console, etc., they could provide you the necessary and the basic insights. But if you want to, like, optimize your environment in a good way, and then you want to develop the practice of, like, cost culture, then you certainly need a tool. I mean, be it Outfit or be it any tool, like, you have applicants of the tool in the market, but you have to select the tool in the right way, because, you have to understand your use case, because for us, selection of Upslift was based on ease of use, like, what capability they are offering, and are they reachable, the support staff, I mean to say, and then, like, the kind of insights, like, those 6 or 7 practices of FinOps, what we call it, like, for example, getting the savings plan inside, getting a unit cost, getting, like, enough, the merger of all cloud providers, the support of CSPs, and then budgeting, so back, charge back, and then tagging, all these things comes to play, and also most importantly the cost of the tool itself, because I just want to emphasize on one thing, like, that so like any other industry, cloud also has its own loopholes, right? So I don't want to call it a loophole, but there are many companies, like, who also come and then promise that, okay, we will go and then just say 50% of the cloud cost. I mean, so I must say that there is no magic wand,
Yeah,
you
correct.
you can't just go and right size and get 50% cost benefit. It's a very painful journey, because I always talk about this thing, that being in the FinOps, it's more challenging, because you are entering, you are kind of like, going into others' house and saying that, hey, your house is not built in the right way.
Yeah, completely
So,
agree.
so it's a very painful thing to achieve. And then if somebody is claiming that, okay, we can save 60% of your entire cloud cost, just, you have to understand what they're talking about.
Right.
Choose your tool wisely. Fortunately for us, Upslift is providing those insights what we need, and I see a foreseeable future with them. But for you, the use case may be different, and you could choose anything. I mean, there are plenty of tools available in the
And I
market.
think it largely depends upon the stage of maturity with
Yeah.
respect to how people are using cloud as well, right? I mean, like, I think this also is a very, I would say, important index to look at, right? For someone, I think in our experience, Ankit, I think for someone, I would say spending annually $1 to $2 million, like on any kind of provider, like cloud provider, right? I think like for them, I would say a heavy duty FinOps tool might not be a requirement in general, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like I think like for them it is more about the discipline and building out that hygiene of like using and scaling cloud like within I would say the particular group of engineers, because like someone spending like a $1 to $2 million bill annually, in all I would say that likelihood cases would not be having like hundreds of engineers working in the company at least at that scale, like overall, right?
But I used, like, I just want to, like, add one point here, because when it comes to the, the cloud spending,
Yeah.
whether it's $1 million per year or, like, $100 million per year, the wastage may not be, again, it's a hypothetical analysis, again, not talking about the industry. So maybe if a company is spending $100 million, having $10 million wastage, they could withstand easily, right?
Yeah.
Just 10% wastage. But a company who is just starting up, and, like, out of 1 million, if they are wasting 10%, it's a very big risk, because
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, for the startup world, there are a lot of fundings required, and that $1 million, which out of, like, let's say $100,000 getting vested, that could be used for, like, real development purpose. If you are spending $10,000 per tool and get that necessary insight, tool or consulting or whatever it is, like, or you invest on a FinOps practice, who could come down and save that $10,000 per month, let's say, right? That's going to build your foundation of, like, the of a mature cloud cost model. I mean, when you scale up, it will be acting in your favor, and you don't end up wasting $10 million when you reach $100 million.
Correct.
I would say, for the initial the startup world, having a FinOps practice is more important. Be it like, short-term consulting, or be it like, getting somebody with some experience or some cloud experience and looking into the cost. I mean, having cost insight at the very early stage is very, very important, whether you call it FinOps or whether call it, like, the same people. It's quite important. Otherwise, like, And then that's how this $200 billion has piled up, right? Like, because people had not the necessary insight, or they were not much aware.
Not aware, exactly. I think I was just you kind of complimented that, Ankit, right? But I think awareness is like super important. I mean, if we like look at basically on our existing customers as well, right? I think
Yeah.
a lot of I would say the overspending situations of the cloud that even our customer portfolio like are into at this point in time is the result of a technical debt that is still not cleared
Yep.
at this point in time,
Absolutely.
right? And that technical debt is the result of, I would say, it's not that someone deliberately planned to kind of like overspend upon the cloud, right? It was just about that, I would say, education. Like of, I would say, FinOps, which let's say people would have at certain points in time while building out their architectures, right? Those considerations, had that been kept like while design systems, I think people like probably would not have been like into like
Yeah,
situations
absolutely.
that people are
Because
into.
when you start a company, your all like primary goal is to build, right?
Yeah.
You don't much care about what the cost looks like, or you are not aware. I mean, it's a human psychology that you don't think about anything else other than keep on building and bring some customer,
Correct.
and you don't realize in no time you end up in that technical debt, and it's very difficult. Because in our case, we have seen we had resources piled up from 2017, 15, right? So, and then it was just adding up. I mean, for no reason. And because of that lack of awareness of the accountability ownership, because nobody was there who was taking the ownership of cost management. So it was just sitting there for no reason. And then each penny, each cents, we spend it kinds of account to the overall MRR and cloud cost balance. So
Definitely.
the summary is have a FinOps discipline. I mean,
Hmm.
if the company has resources to hire someone, go ahead and hire him or her, or at least seek some help from tools and experts and the consulting firms, I would say.
Definitely. Yeah, that's like well put, Ankit. Ankit, before I take up the next question, right? Just kind of like click this in my mind and wanted to like sort of like discuss it with you, right? Like of course, from an industry standpoint, if you see that the last, I would say 2-3 years have been like couple of years specifically have been hard for like I would say like the startup world in general, right? Like
Yep.
there has been a funding winter due to higher interest rates and stuff like that, right? And due to which like a lot of rippling effect like kind of like flowed into the startup world ecosystem. Unfortunately, there were like kind of like layoffs happening and like a lot of different things. And one of the things that we like also saw during this period, that a ruthless prioritization towards cloud spend reduction as well, like overall, right? Would want to like really understand this from you, like how has FinOps as a practice changed for you in the last couple of years versus to what it was, I would say, when there wasn't a funding winter, let's say like prior to, I would say, a couple of years or so, right? So have you seen any difference in these both of like comparing both of these times, right? And today in your experience, like what, given that there was a time when there was money flowing into the startup ecosystem like crazy, right? And everyone was sort of like in the hyper growth mode and was not
Yeah.
like really accounting for costs which were not directly leading to, like I would say, the growth of the company, be it the ARR or the user growth, whatever, right? So we like saw that time as well what the cloud spending, I would say mindset was.
Yeah.
Cloud spend mindset was versus to what basically it was in the funding winter. And now, given that people and the companies have seen both these, I would say, times and have come and entering into 2024, right? Wherein, so yeah, would just want to like understand that how has been your personal journey with respect to, I would say, FinOps as a practice perception in both these times and to where you stand today.
Absolutely, yeah. So for me, I mean, again, I mean, we'll talk about a little bit about the industry, how it has changed over these past few years, and then I'll talk about myself, what I have experienced, you know. So yeah, like any other new domain which gets introduced, cloud kind of boomed maybe 6, 7, 10 years, that has boomed, right? And when anything new gets introduced, like AI at this time, right? So it's a usual thing that people try to learn that technology, right? So 6 or 7 years before, people were learning cloud. They were not, I mean, yes, they had, I mean, everybody, they had an understanding that, like, there is some cost involved, but they were not much mature and aware that, like, how the cost could create a rippling effect in the air. Because the finance and the technical department, they were not correlated. Like, they were not talking to each other, right? Like, so they didn't have a breeze. Because, like, you see OpEx, you see CapEx, you see engineering, cost and all. So I mean, it's kept separate. Like, CFO looks into it, and it's done. Um, and then for the engineering perspective, you get the budget, you spend whatever you want to do, and right, and the budget is, like, always, it's kind of, I mean, in my experience, I've seen, you don't, I mean, sometimes the budget is very, very, like, um uh, overthought. I would say,
Right.
like, because you don't have enough insights into what exactly your workload will look like in a year or two, right? So,
Mm.
specifically for the cloud, and then people were kind of keep on building stuff. And then at that time, when we introduced FinOps practice in my previous organization, I mean, we kind of landed in the same role. Like, I mean, at that time, the everybody was going into the hyper growth state. So the cost reduction was not a primary focus,
Yeah.
rather getting insights was a primary focus, right?
Understood.
But that's how you see, as I said earlier, like, in 2022, the cloud cost wastage was 36% for that study. And in 2023, they're estimating it to be 28%. So it's a 6% cost reduction, which is a huge amount of money across the enterprise. So the thought process, the mindset drastically changed, because you are absolutely right. Like, when you are in a hyper growth state, you don't much care about the small things.
Yeah.
But end of the day, if for some reason, like, if I lose my job, and uh, uh, I have to do, like, my own budgeting and own spend forecasting, I will do cuts at my, things what I've been doing. So that's the same thing for the company as well. Like, if you don't get the, like, necessary momentum from the market industry, then you look like, very good
Yeah.
say a lot. And then cloud is the easy way to do that, right?
Yeah. Correct.
Other than all these, like, things which happened, and unfortunately, a lot of people have been laid off. But cloud cost is definitely a good contributor. And
Yeah.
I must say, you know end of the day, it's money, right? Like, if you
Yeah.
are saving,
Real money at the end of the
so,
day.
so real money which is going to the big players. And if you save something, that may translate into saving someone's job, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I think cannot agree more on this, Ankit. And I think that's a sentiment that we as well like really carry on this, right? That for me, I think personally, the learning has been like seeing both the market cycles closely, and then still running as a company. Like forget about we being a FinOps, like I would say per product, etc. Right? But we are a company fundamentally in the very first place as well,
yeah,
and seeing both these cycles, right? I think like we've realized that okay, the importance of I would say like controlled cloud spending and managed cloud spending to be this only that okay if we don't do it right it would means it could potentially mean in your rainy day time someone's job at some point in
absolutely.
time, right? And that's kind of like very true. So
Yeah,
Ankit, I think we'll move to further questions as well, like in the interest of time as well, right? So we'll take it Jamie's question. I think so. Jamie asks, he says that like I run an MSP with multiple pass, and he says, does the OpsLift platform make recommendations on how to optimize identified costs? Interested in areas associated with right sizing, cloud sprawl, and data transfer. So, like, I'll answer this question, like Ankit, and if you want to add any points from your side by
yeah,
from a user's perspective, like, please feel free to do so, right? So yes, Jamie, I think we do essentially like provide recommendations in our platform as well, which are able to like solve this particular use case, like as you mentioned, right, across the right sizing perspective. That the platform itself like suggests you across all the three providers, that is AWS, GCP, Azure, and we've started doing some Snowflake as well, and then like integrating multiple providers as well to provide I would say insights to you based upon like certain usage metrics that we are by default able to monitor unless we integrate more metrics into the system, such as CPU, memory, disk, etc., and publish you, I would say, certain architecture specific recommendations of what we see that, okay, what the usage pattern was looking like for this particular, I would say, group of resources in across different environments. And then we sort of like make you a recommendation that if we feel so that, okay, for this particular, I would say, usage type, an alternate machine is sort of like also available, which would give you the same kind of performance and would actually like cost you less, like on a month-on-month period overall. So we make these sort of like recommendations from a right sizing perspective, and then also like from a cloud sprawl, if my understanding is correct, I think these are, I would say, the low-hanging fruits that we sort of like really have to address, and I think so. This is the start of the platform, like from an optimization perspective, like what we like really do cover. That the insights are not just the right sizing insights that we like really publish for, but we also do publish any kind of, I would say, let's say the obvious mistakes sometimes what we do commit upon the cloud, that okay, left one elastic IP address kind of like hanging around and we forgot to kind of like really, let's say, kill it off, right? Or elastic IP address by, I mean, right? But yeah, I think so, like cloud sprawl something also cover. Data transfer is definitely an interesting, I would say, area for us. Like what we do now is on a case-to-case basis with respect to our customers, is to give them a visibility with respect to any like the source and destination of their data transfers, across their environment overall. So the customers kind of like really use this visibility to like really understand that, okay, hey, I now am able to like really qualify that, okay, which of the particular source and destinations data transfer are like expensive in nature for me, or like are not something planned by me in general. It could be simple as it is that, okay, hey, there's a inter AZ transfer looking like between two machines, right? But someone didn't notice that, okay, the data is being exchanged between these two machines is not required in general. It could, both these machines could have been hosted in a single AZ, and so the DT cost could have been like really saved for. So that's how we give visibility like about the source and destinations of the data transfer as well, like at this point in time. But that's more like from a, I would say, product pitch perspective. But Ankit, if you want to add something like based on your experience,
you covered it well, and like so from a cloud sprawl perspective, like I think you do have the asset management, which can like provide. I mean, if needed, it can create a topology of what's being used
yeah.
for purpose. I mean, I think you covered it well.
Cool. Thanks, Ankit. Like we'll cover Mukul's second question as well, Ankit. So Mukul says that, is your product secure, cyber secure enough so that data OEM automotive manufacturers is not leaked into the market? I think, Ankit, like you should probably like take this question so that, okay, given that you are the user of our tool and we have gone through the cycles of, I would say, like an enterprise engagement like with you, right, where security is one of the, I would say, biggest checklist that we had to like sort of like clear like with you, right? So I think
because like we are dealing in the US healthcare,
yeah.
and that's like absolutely secured environment. I mean, we can't take any kind of cyber risk,
Right.
from compliance perspective for any tool. So we had gone through a rigorous testing from our security experts, and made sure that each and everything is like checked, because you have the lot of compliance to meet with when you are dealing with US healthcare data.
Correct.
So I think like from a compliance perspective, that the tool is having all the checks in place. But feel free to add, Ayush.
No, thanks, Ankit. I think like would want the audience to kind of hear from your voice first, and then I'll add to it. But yeah, I think Mukul, I think the way we sort of like do is that like we primarily engage with enterprise customers, right? So I think ensuring how we store data like of the customers is the first thing that we are answerable to our customers. Beyond anything, I would say from a compliance, I would say certification perspective and everything, I think that like really comes afterwards, right? Right for us, right? But I think the first answerable, I would say, tangent for us is to like really like make the customers like really believe in us, like on our architectures or how we like really store the data, right? And like we have gone through this rigorous cycles, as Ankit mentioned, of the security teams of enterprise companies such as Innovaccer, where the security teams like really first understand our architectures in terms of how we store data, and of course then they like really look into our certifications that like either we are sort of like compliant enough according to the needs of the company, because like depending upon the industry that will in it, right? But I would say like from a trust building perspective, I think we're quite open about as a company, like to its cybersecurity teams, that if demanded, we would kind of like open up our architectures and show it to them that how we store data, so that that confidence is, and we commit to that architecture to them as well, that it's not going to sort of like really change in any soon course of time. And if it is going so, we do keep them in loop that okay, this is what we are changing the architectures. And if it feels so that if this sort of like really compromising upon their security systems in general, right? We do make sure to kind of like take necessary steps to kind of like keep all the checks and balances in place. So that's how we manage security like for our customers with respect to data that they gave us to like really store for. Yeah. Cool. I think we have like a few minutes left, like on the call, like with respect to this, right? To wind up this, I think Ankit, like I like really want to like make the audience listen from you that if someone has to kind of like really like start their journey into FinOps, right? Like let's say someone has joined a particular company and is experiencing a large, I would say, cloud spend corpus before him or her, right? And wants to like really start off with the cloud spend management or the FinOps management in general, right? How should they like really think about it, right? And I think that's the key takeaway that anyone can get from you. Like,
I mean, that's a brilliant question because, I mean, because FinOps is pretty new. I mean, so there are scarcity of the resources in the market, like, who has FinOps expertise, right? Luckily, like, slowly, a lot of FinOps tools are coming, and like, there are FinOps Foundation, then FinOps conference, etc. is happening. So to make sure, like, FinOps awareness is happening across the market. And over the course of years, the demand of FinOps professional will be more and more, like, drastically more, because the cloud, if you are into cloud, you need a cost management. Otherwise, like, it's unsustainable. Now, talking about, like, how could you build a career in FinOps? For me, it worked out, a natural process, like, because in order to become successful, you must have to have, like, some foundational knowledge, or not the theoretical, like, some foundational knowledge about how the application works, how infrastructure works, be it, data center, on-prem or cloud, right? Like, you obviously need to understand, like, the cloud's primary services, but you should know, like, how application talks to each other. Otherwise, like, you can't provide recommendation just by, going through a couple of reading materials. So
yeah.
I would say, like, if you want to jump into this domain, somebody seek help from somebody who knows the things, right? Like, there are multiple abundance of, like, study material available in the, internet. You can probably go for a FinOps practitioner certification where you get all the details, right? And then getting the necessary scope to enter into FinOps domain, because people have a misconception that FinOps is finance domain, which is absolutely not true. Finance, it's kind of a complement on what you are doing. I mean, it's not even 10% of work what FinOps do in the technology space, because, I mean, it's kind of, as I said, you are getting in. I mean, there are, like, so knowledgeous people who have architected the environment, and now you are coming from the FinOps team and going to say that, like, hey, let's do it other way, like, change the machine type. So in order to do that, you need a lot of data, a lot of analytics in the back end to support it. Otherwise, nobody is going to entertain you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very true.
So just you need some, so slowly move into the domain. I mean, if you want to start with, you could leverage tools like OpsLift or any other tool to start, like, in how the dynamics work, because end of the day, the FinOps principle works in three ways, like, inform, optimize, and operate. You have to start informing. You grab the data through these tools or native console, and, like, then you analyze it through Power BI, Tableau, or Excel, or whatever it is, and then you coordinate and collaborate with a lot of folks by that project management skill, because without that, it's not going to happen. Because 90% of the work in FinOps is collaboration and coordination. 10% is your analysis, right? Because you have to make sure people trust you, what you're saying. People, truly believe in you. That what analysis you have done has a lot of obviously it is data driven, but end of the day, you have to make good friends in the company. I mean, otherwise it's going to be very difficult, because you need to, end of the day, you need to empower them and enable that cost our culture. If you don't have the necessary cross team collaboration and project management skill, it's going to be very difficult. Then the second step is to optimize. When you're talking about optimize, that's where you need a little bit of experience, right? Because you can't just get into AWS console and do the things on a wild run, right? It could backstab at you. So that's where you need the experience folks to come in and coach you, guide you. And then finally, optimize the governance, the strategies, what you need to do, and etc. And then make sure that the floodgate is closed, because that's very, very important. Because once you identify that, okay, we need to save this much, or we need to stop the wastage, you can't keep the wastage coming in, right? You have to have a solid governance process. So all these things will come with experience. I would not say a graduate coming out of college can do all these things. You certainly need experienced folks, but it's a wonderful journey, I must say. You could enjoy learning. And I mean, you have a couple of folks in your company too, who came and joined you directly, and then they have become FinOps experts. So
absolutely, yeah.
It's not a rocket science, but it certainly needs a little bit of a dedication and
it's challenging as well. I think it's pretty challenging, at every step. It just keeps getting harder. I think with every, I would say, maturity of the cloud spend that we can sort of.
Because the low hanging fruits that you said, it's easy. Identifying unused EC2 is easy, but identifying the root cause behind a data transfer, it's tough.
Super hard.
So and identifying how the NAT gateway. I mean, you just mentioned it, inter-AG data transfer, that certain, you can't have one machine sitting in one AG and the other one sitting in other, and have so you need to have that kind of expertise and experience in order to get into a solid FinOps state.
Right. Cool, Ankit. I think, Ankit, we might have to do a time check now. So I'll now wrap this up. But this was so much engaging, Ankit. Thanks for spending so much of time with us and sharing your ideas. And it was as always great to discuss things with you, right? Surbhi, anything else that you would want us to discuss and talk about here?
No, yeah, please go ahead, Ankit.
Sorry, Ankit. Oh, yeah.
No. Yeah. I thought it was a question to me. I didn't realize it was for you. Please.
Yeah, Ayusha and Ankit, thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much all the folks who joined us today. I think it was a great discussion, and we can wrap it up now. Yeah.
Okay. Cool, Ankit. Thanks again, Ankit, for joining. Okay. See you then. Bye-bye. Thanks, folks. Thanks for joining in.